Hello everyone, this is Kenneth Bruni from Tech and welcome back to the channel. So in this series of videos, you are learning Python, and this is specifically SENG 207 Programming for Engineers, a course taught at the University of Ghana. So if you have been following along, we have this particular structure we have been going through, and this has been put together like the chapters of a book. So currently we're on chapter 22 when we are looking at extra. So extra, I mean all the loopholes and other things we needed to learn moving along. And this is going to be the second part. The first part, we looked at exception handling. And like I indicated in the first part, I have a video on environment variables, which I'll leave in the link below. And this is this video, how to use environment variables to hide password and secret data. Now, I must say that video only works for people who are going to use the Windows operating system. It's a little bit different when you are using Mac. And since I don't have a MacBook, I'm unable to record video using that. But then just check online. There will be other resources you can look at. Now, in this particular video, you are going to look at virtual environments. And virtual environments is very, very important. So let's assume you are working on a project, and in the next year, you are supposed to work or modify some code within that project. Now, chances are you may run into problems because if you are trying to use different packages for different purposes, now things may conflict, and I'm going to show you a typical example. But then the virtual environment kind of creates an isolation. So we have our global environment, and we are definitely going to have a virtual environment for that matter. And when I talk about isolation, the virtual environment allows you to create an isolated environment from your system, okay, with its own dependencies and configuration. This means you can avoid conflict between different projects and versions of packages. I'm going to show you a typical example. Now, it enhances productivity. By creating a virtual environment, you can ensure that your code will work consistently across different machines as long as they have the same virtual environment setup. Now, when you have a virtual environment setup, it ensures that whenever you are testing your work, okay, you are running some unit testing, everything is going to run smoothly. And then it also ensures security. By isolating your code and dependencies, you can reduce the risk of security vulnerabilities and ensure that your code is running with the appropriate permissions. Now, it also ensures convenience, and for the convenience sake, the virtual environment makes it easier to manage and switch between different configurations and dependencies. So what I'm going to show you first of all is when we do a pip list. Let me just clear this. So when I'm to do a pip list and press enter, let me just collapse this a little bit. We are going to see all the packages I have installed in this environment, and later on we are going to switch to a different setup for us to see things properly. So these are all the packages I have here. But now let me show you a typical instance. And here I'm going to go into my Jupyter Notebook environment. And over here, I have this data set, this iris.csv data set I would want to work with. So first of all, let me import some libraries. So I'm going to import pandas as PD, and I'm going to import Seaborn as SNS. So I just need these two libraries to demonstrate what I want to do. So now the cell has completed running, and I can now declare, for instance, a data frame. So df is equal to cd.read underscore csv, which is a method inside of pandas. And now I want to pass in the name of the data set, which is iris.csv. So I'll run this, and I don't have any problem. Now, when I do df, which is my data frame, trying to preview or have a preview of it, this is what I get. Good. Now, this we discussed in other videos, so I'm just running through. I just want to prove a point over here. So now I would want to do some plotting over here. And what I want to do is I want to use Seaborn. Seaborn is a visualization library. We can use it to plot graphs. And what I'm going to do is I just want to do SNS dot, and I'm going to, or I want to have a distribution plot. So there's a method in there called dist plot, and this is where we are going to see interesting things. And I'll pass in the data, which is my data frame, and I want to do a distribution plot of the sepal learn.cm, which is a column inside of my iris.csv data set. So I'm going to do df dot what I have over here. Now when I run this, we have everything is working, I mean, as at this point, but then there's an issue over here and we get a warning, and it says this plot method we are trying to use from Seaborn is deprecated, or it is a deprecated function and will be removed in Seaborn version 0.14.0. So currently, let's try printing out our version of Seaborn, and I'm quickly going to do that by doing a print. No, let me just take this up. Let's create a cell under this. So I'm just going to run a print, and I'm going to do SNS dot underscore version underscore. So now when I run this, I do get the version of the Seaborn library that I'm using now. Currently, I am using 0.12.2. So as far as this version of my Seaborn library is concerned, this plot works. But then I'm getting some information that in version 0.14.0, which may probably be released now or maybe in some few months. Let's assume this hasn't been released yet. So let's say in 2 months' time, this will be released. Now, what this basically means that in 2 months' time, if I install Seaborn on my system and try using this plot as I have over here, it will be removed, or by that time, chances are it has been removed, and for which reason my code is going to catch an error. However, if I create a virtual environment and do an installation of Seaborn using this particular version, then I don't have any problem. So I've isolated my working environment from the global environment. And this is why you may want to use virtual environments for your projects. So I'm going to switch off to typical examples showing us different means and ways we can work with virtual environments. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my desktop and I'm going to create in a new folder so that we can work on a clean slate. So I'm going to call this work. You can give it any name. And I'm going to open my VS Code environment and try and open the folder. So I'm going to go through my desktop and I'll select this folder over here. So I have the folder selected. Let me just close this and open a terminal so that we can start working. So there are two key things I would want you to keep in mind. And in as much as we are creating a virtual environment, there is a global environment. And the global environment is by default the environment we had installed the other library. So any other library we had ever installed is or was installed onto the global environment. And we can actually check that if I'm to do a pip list and press enter. This is basically me checking the packages or libraries I've installed on my global environment. And clearly you can see that there are quite a number over here. So this is looking good. Now we would want to create a virtual environment. And in creating a virtual environment, we come into our terminal and type in the command. So we type in Python -m, which is make. And we type in venv. This is something you cannot change. So it is Python -m venv. Then the next thing you type over here is whichever name you want to give your virtual environment. And I've seen a lot of people do venv, which is valid. So in this case, what is going to happen is a folder is going to be created in this directory where you have the folder name as venv. So I'll press enter. And currently you can see that the folder has been created. It is still creating. It probably takes about some few seconds, and some subfolders and other files will be created alongside. So we just have to wait for a while. So now we can see that we have our virtual environment created. And if I'm to just open this up, you can see that I also have some subfolders in here So I have include lib and scripts. And if I'm to open up scripts, we have these files showing up over here. And this is where we are eventually going to activate this virtual environment. So in as much as the virtual environment has been created, we are not in it yet. We are not using it yet. So once again, if I'm to do a pip list and press enter, we are still going to see the installations from our global environment. And that's exactly what I should. Now, in order to activate this pip list, we need to go through virtual env, which is the folder, and go through scripts. And as you can see, there's an activate over here, the first file we have over here, and an activate.bat. So the way we go through this is, first of all, we go through venv, which is the folder you have over here. Then we have to go through to scripts. So I'll do a /scripts this way. And as you can see, it is scripts with an S over here. Then I'll do a /activate.bat. So now when I do activate.bat, it's supposed to work. And I believe most of you, it is going to work on your systems. So you press enter. Now it doesn't work for me. And I don't know why, but then don't worry. If activate.bat doesn't work, you simply have to do activate. So I'm just going to bring this up again and I'll do activate. So when I press enter, now it is working for me, and it is working for me because you could see that there's a change of, let's say, the environment over here. So you could see that first it was showing up in my C drive, and now even though it is on my C drive, but then I have it being prefixed by the name of the virtual environment I've installed over here. And in order to check, we can actually do a pip list. And when I do a pip list, clearly you could see that inside of this virtual environment, I only have 2 packages installed. And these 2 packages are the default ones that comes with Python. So you have pip and you have setup tools. You don't have anything. And that's simply because you are in this virtual environment. Now, this virtual environment is exclusive. We've created that exclusive from the main environment, which is our global environment. Now, let's say you want to go back to the global environment. We can simply deactivate this. And once again, this deactivate is exactly what you see over here. So you could see that we have deactivate.bat over here. And what I can simply do is I can type in deactivate. So deactivate, and when I press enter, you see that now I've switched back to my global environment because I don't have anything being prefixed by the environment name I've created over here. So if I'm to come back here and do a pip list, because I'm in my global environment, this is eventually going to list all the packages I've ever installed. So once again, let me go back into my virtual environment, and I'm going to do a venv /scripts/activate. So when I press enter, we get a problem, and that's simply because we misspelled activate. So it's supposed to be activate this way. So I'll press enter, and now we are in the virtual environment. Once again, let's do a pip list, and clearly we see that we have only these 2 libraries showing up over here. So what I'm going to do is, we are now going to work in this, and let me just create in a Python file. So I'm going to call this app.py over here. So I have app.py created, and in order to make this work properly, especially with the setup I have over here, I think for most of you everything is going to work, but then I'll need to click on this over here, and you can see that I have this, and you can see that it is being prefixed as my global environment, and I have this one over here which I have as my venv. So this is actually my virtual environment in which I want to work from, and you can see that this is the recommended one it is giving me. So I'll then have to select this, and you can see that it is also being prefixed by the name of the virtual environment I have put out over here. So in here, I'm going to install, for instance, let's say numpy. So I can do pip install numpy this way. So when I press enter, and of course you need internet for this to work. Now you could see that we have only 2 libraries by default over here, and I'm trying to install NumPy onto this virtual environment we have in here. So now we have NumPy installed, and now if I'm to do a pip list once again and press enter, we do have, okay, just only NumPy added onto our virtual environment over here. Now let me do a pip, and I'm going to do install, and this time around I'll do pandas. So you have pip install pandas. Now press enter, and I believe pandas definitely has a number of other dependencies in terms of libraries that will be installed alongside. So the installation of pandas is complete, but clearly you could see that it came with other dependents or other dependencies. So you see on this particular line that's installing collected packages, and that's why you see over here as pytz we have 6 and python dateutil, and of course pandas as well. So now if I'm to do once again a pip list and press enter, we get to see that pandas came along with other dependencies, but that's not really what we are interested in. We are most focused on the fact that we have created a virtual environment and we have isolated this environment from our global environment. So now if I'm to deactivate, so if I'm to type in deactivate this way and press enter, I've now left my virtual environment. I'm inside of my global environment, and you could see that I don't have the directory being prefixed by the virtual environment seen over here. So now if I'm to do a pip list, this is going to show me all the packages I have installed in my global environment, and these packages will be quite different from the ones I have in my virtual environment. So clearly, as you can see, these are the packages. I think there are quite a few over here. So let me show you a particular one, and I have this over here, which is my own package or library. That's the kbtcal. So inside of my global environment, there's kbtcal version 1.2 installed. Now let me go back into my virtual environment, and I'm doing this back and forth so that at least you become very comfortable working with this. So I'm going to do venv, which is actually the folder or the virtual environment folder we have over here, then a /scripts. Remember, when we go into this, there's a scripts subfolder in there, as you can see. And then what I then need to do is to do a /activates. So I'll press enter, and indeed you could see that it is now activated. So I can now come in here, and if I'm to do a pip list, this should list all the packages I have in my virtual environment, which is indeed the ones I just installed. That's pandas and NumPy and the other dependencies that came with them. So inside of this virtual environment, once again, let me do another installation of a library, and this time around I'm going to install the kbtcal. So I'll do kbtcal this way, and I'll press enter, and this should install kbtcal into my virtual environment. Okay, so it says the installation was successful, although it gave us some few warnings over here, but then at the end of the day, successfully installed kbtcal version 1.2. So if I'm to do a pip list once again, I get to see that in addition to the other libraries I've already installed, now I have kbtcal showing up over here. So this is looking good, and this is probably one of the ways you would want to work with virtual environments. Now there's one thing I would need to show you. Now let's assume you have built an application and you have some specific libraries and maybe some specific versions of those libraries you would want to keep, and maybe you would want people working with your system to also install those dependencies or packages. All that you can do is you can create a requirement.txt file so that you don't have to upload your virtual environment onto your Git repository. You just have to add in that requirement.txt, which is actually a file. So, I mean, very lightweight. And for which reason, anybody using your system can just pick up that requirement.txt and install your libraries. All right, so this is the way we go about it. So for instance, if I'm to do a pip list, this will actually list the libraries I have. But then there's another one we can do, and that's pip freeze. So when I am to do a pip freeze this way and press enter, this is also going to list it, but then in a very systematic way, in a sense that it's rather lists the package and give an equal to of the version number. So pip list will just name the package and the version, like in a form of a table, if you are to look at it that way. But then when you do pip freeze, it actually says that kbtcal is equal to 1.2 for the version and stuff like that. Now we can redirect the output of this stream. Now when you do a pip freeze, it is actually going to output in your terminal as you have it this way. Now we can redirect it into a text file, and let me just type in pip freeze once again, and instead of pressing enter, I'm now going to do this greater than symbol over here, and I'm now going to say requirement.txt. So what I'm trying to say is now channel this whatever thing we are going to see over here into a file called requirement.txt, and that's actually going to be created over here. So now when I press enter, indeed you could see that I have requirement.txt showing up over here, and when I open this up, it is exactly what was supposed to be printed out, but because I redirected the stream, it's created a new file, requirement.txt, and in there was what was supposed to be printed out. So currently this is what you have, and like I said, anybody using your system can just get a copy of this requirement.txt and run an installation, and everything will be done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean up everything. I'm going to delete everything except for the requirement.txt, so that we are going to assume maybe you have your application, everything is running, but then whoever is working with your work, or whoever is working with your code, is supposed to get those dependent libraries to work with, and we are simply going to use the requirement.txt to install everything that we need. So in here, I'm going to go onto my desktop, and I'll just open up the folder we are working with, and I'll just I'll just move requirement.txt out over here, and I'll just want to delete what I have in here. All right, so I think I need to close my VS Code in order for this to work. I also need to close this folder. All right, so the folder is currently empty, as you can see, and now I'm going to bring my requirement.txt. So I'm going to open VS Code. All right, so we have this opened up, and currently you can see that I only have this requirement.txt showing up over here. And if I'm to open this up, this is exactly what we had. But then we don't have any virtual environment set up in here. But then as usual, we can do a pip list. And if I'm to do a pip list, this is actually going to open up all the packages I have installed in my global environment. And that's what you see over here. So what I want to do is I want to create a virtual environment and quickly install all these packages I have over here. And if you remember, we just have to do a python-m, which is like make, and I type in venv. This venv is I want to go into the standard library of Python and try and make a virtual environment. So this is a constant, but then the other name you provide, in the first instance I used venv, I could have used any other name. So I'm going to say this time around, I'm going to say my env, okay, like my environment. And this is going to be the name of the folder that is going to be created over here. So when I press enter, we are going to see that my env is created, and it's going to have all those files we saw the other one have. So for instance, we can go into the subfolder scripts and go and activate. It takes a little while, maybe some few seconds, to go through this creation. Now, if I'm to open this up, you can see that I have this scripts folder in here, and in there, once again, you can see that I have this, everything I used to have showing up over here. Now, let me just do this. If I'm to do a pip list, clearly I'm still in my global environment because I don't have this virtual environment being prefixed over here. So how do I activate this? It's as simple as what we did. So this time around is going to be my env this way, and I'll do /scripts. So I have script over here, and I'll do /activate. So when I press enter, indeed, you could see that the virtual environment has been activated. And then one of the ways we see that is when we see our directory being prefixed by the name of that virtual environment, the name we gave it over here. So now that we are here, we can actually check our pip list to check the list of libraries or packages we have in here. So if I'm to do a pip list and press enter, we get to see that this is a newly created virtual environment. So clearly we don't have any package except for the two default ones we already know. So quickly, I just want to grab requirement.txt and install it. All the libraries I have in here. So the way we do that is very simple. I'm going to do a pip install, and I'm going to prefix this with an R. So I'll do a -R, and I'm going to type in the name of the file I have over here. In this case, it's requirements.txt. So I'm going to say requirements.txt. So I'll press enter, and it is going to grab every piece of package over here, and it is going to install them onto my virtual environment. This my env as I have over here. So just about now, the installation is complete. So once again, let's do a pip list to actually check. And as you can see, we are still within the virtual environment we just created. And now you could see that we have all these packages installed because we simply use the requirement.txt. And this is what you would normally do, because let me just quickly show you. If you have to go into our file system, and for instance, this is the mine env, and let me just do show properties, and clearly you can see that the size of this file is about 149 megabytes, and that's simply because of the packages we have installed, because all these packages will be found somewhere there. And let me also show you that if I'm to come in here and open this up, and for instance open this lib, clearly you can see that every package I have installed, starting from kbtcal and all the other dependencies, are all listed over here. So if a project has about, let's say, 20 packages, then indeed all these 20 packages are going to be installed, and for which reason the file size will become very huge. And if you are committing such projects onto GitHub, you may run into problems if the file sizes are very huge. So what you want to do is, you wouldn't want to include your virtual environment, because nobody wants to know your virtual environment. But then you can put all your packages in a requirement.txt, and this requirement.txt if I'm to check over here the size of this, if I'm to go to properties, clearly you could see that it's very small, like 190 bytes. So clearly it is a more prudent option to actually ignore your virtual environment folder and actually just upload your requirement.txt onto GitHub or any other way of you sharing it, so that whoever wants to work using your virtual environment can simply install from your requirement.txt and will have a version of your virtual environment. Basically, that's a more prudent way of handling this whole thing. All right, so this is going to be the end of this particular video, and the general rule of thumb is you are most encouraged to use virtual environments for almost every project. That's basically that. And the reason being, it is very important you isolate your work so that if there are changes as packages gets updated here and there, especially with the example I showed you, you wouldn't run into problems. I mean, your code will stand the test of time because everything you have will be dependent on a particular group of packages. So this is going to be the end of this video. Now, if you find value in the content I'm putting out over here, kindly support my work by subscribing to the Cambro Tech channel. Also, don't forget to hit on the notification button so that anytime I release a video, you'll be duly notified. Share this video with friends and family who find this content very useful. At Cambro Tech, we say learn programming. You can do it. Bye bye and catch you in the next video.